What's cooking, folks? Vermillion Phoenix here, and today we are jumping into some more Orcs Must Die 3. This time we are going to be heading into the Dragon Boneyard. This is the second to last war scenario that is in the main campaign for the game, the Old Friends campaign. And it's the first one that allows you to do something that we haven't actually done in a really long time here, which is
You know what?
gate joining. There's multiple gates on this map.
We're a great team.
Who would have guessed? But yeah, we really are.
They just have a little bit of exposition going on there. There's 4 gates that you have to be concerned with on this map. There's the 2 outer gates that allow you to use your war scenario traps. These are going to be delivering the bulk of the minions to you. Now, if you need to rank up or complete some of the little mini achievements to unlock the upgrades on any of your war scenario traps, you can drop them outside of the gate here. They will get pretty much all of the traffic through them, but ultimately that does not work super well for trying to manage all of the enemies coming through here, just to make sure that, you know, the rift itself is kind of secure. You will need to do a little bit of extra work just to make sure that enemies aren't leaking through your initial setup on the first wave. And so I generally just recommend letting them through the gate initially. I like to be a little bit safer and make sure that they aren't going to be taking multiple routes to the rift, and making sure that they aren't getting to the rift alive at all. As far as the trap loadout for this particular setup here, the wall chargers are kind of important because of their ability to zap multiple enemies at once. They don't really have a cap other than the amount of enemies that you can fit into the space where they strike. So it's a very good trap when you get densely packed enemies in one place. The barricades that you saw me place on the bridge on the other side are placed somewhat close so that as soon as the enemies attempt to path there, they'll turn right around. You'll see that happen a couple times later on in the level. And then we have, of course, our Brimstones, which we have placed on the ground to amplify the damage from the wall chargers and any other elemental traps that you decide to use. And the Viscous Tar, which just gives you a bit more time to deal with everything coming through by slowing it down. Or not Viscous Tar, it's just tar traps, but with the upgrade that allows it to persist. The slow persists for about another tile after they step off. That's the 3rd gate, which opens, oddly enough, on wave 3, and then the 4th gate opens on wave 4. So
ready.
This is what we're starting with. We also have our healing trinket, which gives us a bit more health and health regeneration, and the ice amulet for a bit of additional crowd control since I'm using no ice traps. You can use ice traps here, but the buzzsaw trap, which is the ground trap which can freeze enemies, has in the past some audio issues. I think I used it the first time I actually streamed completing this level, and the audio issue there was a bit annoying, just due to the volume ramping that it caused. It was pretty nice. It worked, but I'd prefer not to deal with it at the moment. The other alternative, if you want an ice trap, is to not use the auto ballista, ceiling ballista, and instead use the dart spitter trap on the ceiling, which is possible. I think that with this particular setup, the dart spitter actually would be pretty nice, because the ballistas aren't super integral to the way that this setup works. They help, and they're mainly there just to help deal with the larger enemies. Most of the traps here are selected with the larger enemies in mind, specifically the wall charger over the wall blades. But you know, everything here is pretty nice. So because we don't have enough traps set up yet to guarantee that everything's kind of sliced and diced before it actually gets through here, we are going to just be firing into the crowd with the ballista. Make sure that you don't let yourself get overrun by any of the gnolls. The gnolls pathing is going to largely be based on where your hero character is positioned. When you're actually on the level, you'll have some slightly larger circles that you can see on the mini-map. Just pay attention to those so that you know where they're coming from, so that they don't sneak up on you, which can lead to you being killed and give all the enemies a boost to the rift. That's something that you definitely do not want. Other than that, try to complete the section along the wall where the enemies have to path. You don't want to go overboard placing a ton of barricades or anything to keep the enemies in line, just because the enemies will kind of just get out of the way. It's better for you to prioritize placing additional damage traps, such as the ballista, or completing the line of wall chargers to get damage dealt to the enemies as they're passing through. One of the things that you may notice if you are having trouble with hard time for this level, and you'll notice it a lot more on war scenarios than you will on non-war levels, because of the volume of enemies, is if you aren't placing your traps and making sure that you prioritize getting your damage done first, that enemies might be overrunning the areas that you're trying to defend, or that you'll have a lot of trouble just dealing with a lot of enemies at once. And if you have too many enemies coming at you, it just means that there's not enough things dealing damage to them before they get to you. So you always want to try to select an area that you can effectively deal a lot of damage in, and also kind of hold the enemies in with some forms of crowd control, whether it be the Ice Amulet intermixed with something like tar, or just damage dealing traps, or ice traps. Ice traps just are wonderful in the way that they work in this game, because they just freeze on contact immediately, and that makes them extremely good at holding enemies in place. So you can see it definitely takes a little bit of time for the enemies to actually get to you here, because of that large field where you can place your war traps outside the castle. It's one of the reasons why you want to make sure that they waste no time once they actually get in with getting into your kill boxes. That's why we try to move those bridge barricades as close as possible, while still making sure that the bridge is covered. You do want to be careful with the way that the dynamite archers are going to be. I didn't mention this in the first wave, but I should have. They will show up as yellow dots on the minimap, and their range is pretty far. They can see you even through all of the other enemies, and because the enemies in front of you do not sort of block their aim or arrows, you want to make sure that you don't stand within collateral damage distance, or even within explosive range of any of your barricades, because they'll just fire arrows indiscriminately. If the arrows hit you or land there on the ground, they will still wind up dealing damage to your barricades, and if your barricades actually wind up getting destroyed, then it's just lost coin for you. And like, letting your barricades get destroyed haphazardly ultimately is coin that you could have used to instead build additional damage traps. Alright, and here we go. We're going to start the barricading of the rift to create a single entry point. And I just like this because it's something that you really don't have to do in a lot of the levels here, but they still allow you to use it to your advantage on this particular one, which is cool. Creating these sort of blocked areas around the rift that force multiple lanes and gates to forge themselves into like a single path or line was something that was very much needed in the previous Orcs title, Orcs Must Die Unchained, but something that isn't really done much in any of the other games. So it's cool to see that tactic kind of return without it being like the overwhelming necessity that it was late game in some of those levels. But you'll have to make careful use of the existing terrain and kind of like make sure the corners are touching on pillars and things like this just to be safe. But remember the pathing requirements of this particular game. You need to make sure that there is a full space for heavy enemies to walk through. If you leave only a half-width area when trying to path enemies out of the rift room so that they have to go around, the heavy enemies will immediately just go berserk, bust up the barricades, and run into the rift, and it's something that you should always be aware of. Now for the most part, if you are using the Ballista here and you line up the center roof area with enough of them, no enemies will actually be getting through here. They will start to get shot as they go around the corner. The gravity pillars or gravity wells, I always confuse whether or not this is a pillar or well, but the gravity trap is actually extremely good at just making sure that there's a lot of damage dealt in that area. They will hold all of the light enemies. If you have the upgrade on them to deal damage, they will also take about half the life of most of the lighter enemies with each trigger. And they'll do a little bit of damage to anything that just walks under them while they're firing anyway. So it's a really good trap at just making sure that enemies aren't moving too quickly through the terrain, and it gives you a lot of extra time for things like the Ballista to make shots on enemies. It's a really good trap, and I like the design and the look of it and pretty much everything. It reminds me of like a Star Trek tractor beam. It's just whoever designed that trap, kudos to them. It's nice to look at. It's a cool effect. It's good. We have a little bit more firing here, and our third gate has opened up. Enemies have come out of that stairwell that we showed off in the beginning, and they will initially rock the little gate that you have open on the or closed initially on the right, and there's some additional ceiling space in there that you might be able to use if you have a ceiling trap that you want to use. But because of the way that we're going to set this up for in-game, we're not really worried about that. We want to make sure that the enemies are kind of coming through that area, and then we'll set up the area behind us for the final gate to open, which will be going for the 4th and 5th waves.
Ooh, do they have any more of those?
You can see as the gravity pillars are in, they are kind of just keeping things from really getting nearly as far as they were in the first couple of waves. That kind of completes the trap setup in there, which is really nice. What we're going to do from here, though, is we're going to prepare this section as a little nook to take out the last wave of enemies. We move it over here because if we had it set up in the first area before they actually got to the rift, the enemies have a chance of, because there's going to be some fire lords and fire elementals. If they were to be broken apart there's a chance that they could just run towards the barricades that you have around the rift and knock that open, so the enemies will run in. This way, the closest barricades that they'll be dealing with will be this set of 2 up here, which kind of coerce enemies into moving towards the wall, and another set that are behind it that are kind of forcing enemies to go underneath that little alcove, or whatever you want to call it, where we will be placing additional traps. And again, we want to make sure that we are holding this area when the 4th wave happens, because obviously we don't have a ton of coin to place there yet. We'll get a couple thousand more after we finish off these last couple of enemies.
Do they have any bigger ones?
There we go. And then you get the wave clear bonus for 1,000. And then we use that just to place a few more traps right along the wall here. But it's not enough to place a ton. Like, I don't think you can guarantee a full clear of everything going through there. Though, if you decide to take a different wall trap than the wall charger, like the wall arrows, you just want to be careful with those. You don't want to take the fire versions, because there are some fire elementals and firelings here which will completely negate the fire damage. So if you take the physical ones, grab the pierce so that you can hit multiple enemies, and you can kind of make sure that you're double siding all the walls where they're able to fire from. It'll help out with the damage a bit. You can also place them on those angled walls that are facing down on those stairs for some added damage. And there we go. First few enemies are making it through there. You can see the ballista that are sort of ending that first hallway kill box are firing at the enemies that they're coming around the corner. It's a good reason to place them there.
Boom boom for you and boom boom for you.
And then we have the ogres finally showing up. As long as your setup handles the heavy enemies okay, that really shows where any weak points may be. It's never going to be the regular enemies. If the regular enemies aren't ever handled, then you know your trapping is just, it's not complete. It's not going to stop anything. But the one thing that you need to be sure that you can stop at any point are the runners, which usually get taken out by the Arcane Brimstone in most of my trap setups that I put online. And for the heavier enemies, it's going to be the wall traps that take them down. The ceiling is kind of just gravy because a lot of areas don't have a ton of ceilings that you can make use of, which is why Ballista is always a really good trap to have, because the ceilings may be weird size or just you can't do as much with them because of the placement. But here, because of the way they have this second alcove, I turn on the part time here because it actually annoyed me that I didn't have it on and I didn't realize it until like I'd already started recording, so had to go ahead and do that. I fumbled actually turning it on the first time, but there we have it now. These ceilings are actually really good at allowing you to use multiple different types of ceiling traps. The first ceiling in that hallway that we used was really only good for either gravity pillars or ceiling ballista. But here, because these ceilings are a bit lower, if you needed to, it's possible to use pounders or haymakers, but they would only be useful here, so you have to be careful of that. Where the gravity pillar can go just about everywhere. It's a great trap again, not only because of its utility, but also because of the fact that it has infinite vertical range. So yeah, Again, one of my favorite trap designs out of this title. So far. I'm sure there's probably going to be more in the future, and I'll probably like a few of those even more. Hopefully. And even though the combo numbers are kind of low here, I like the fact that like you can see that things are consistently dying. The kill streak counter is just kind of going up pretty routinely.
Aw, out of coin already?
And while we do have a couple of things under there that are kind of okay, I don't think I placed the Ballista in the best fashion. It would be better to place them underneath the areas that we wind up barricading to prevent enemies from walking through that area, as those areas can still make use of the Ballista. And then we can place more gravity wells kind of covering the walkways that enemies will be going through.
For a split second, I thought about maybe possibly getting a wee bit concerned.
It's just a bit more efficient if you were to do this as like an endless level or something like that. I think that would just ultimately work better. Alright, and here's the last wave.
More enemies.
Yeah, see, we shouldn't have Ballista in the corner like that. They should be hovering over the barricades that we're standing on now. That would give you room for another gravity pillar in an area where enemies would actually be walking. And that means that the Ballista that you actually do set up would have more time and targets to shoot at while they're being levitated.
Sorceress? I have no idea what or who that is.
That is Zelzador, Kelsey, also known as the Resurrector.
What? He brings orcs back to life? Okay, not fair.
Yeah, Zelzador is completely fair. We don't even have to deal with him with this trap setup. He kind of just dies on its own.
Is that it?
And here you'll see pretty much every possible gate in action at the same time. They all kind of just roll into each other, but of course most of the enemies are still at the front outside of the gates. So if you have any war scenario trap that you're looking to get some accrue some uses on or get some damage dealt with, you can just place them out there. The starting area where you're up on that little parapet or just landing with the railing before you actually start is a good place to put archers and any machinery that you want to hop into, like the large war ballista or the mega boom barrel thrower. And that's just me being greedy for some extra damage. I should have actually just dealt with the gnolls there, but instead I was trying to place some more wall chargers so that when enemies get lifted by the gravity pillars, they get shocked in midair. And there's so many enemies on this one that there's a little bit of slowdown that takes place. It's not like my PC because this is Stadia. That's actually just the way that everything runs. I wonder if there's going to be some extra optimization before this hits any other platforms. We'll have to see. And again, that's why we have so many barricades in this section here, because of those fire elementals. When they break apart, they're just going to rush towards the nearest obstructions and then explode. We don't want that.
That got the blood pumping.
But yeah, that's pretty good.
Ooh, do they have any more of those?
Not sure if there's really too much else other than the placement of some of the traps that I would change here if I wanted to optimize this as much as possible. Though I'm sure there's a couple of extra war scenario traps I could use if I wanted to make sure that this went a little bit quicker.
Okay, that was fun.
I just wish there was a few more war scenario traps that you could use inside of the building walls. Most of them have to be used outside in the open fields.
They're attacking a barricade.
Kind of feel like just having the war scenario traps being selectable only in the war scenarios kind of handles that as far as restrictions go for you. Because they're not always like super amazingly broken or anything. Gotta just take care of this guy out the end of the level. And we're done.
One already? Awesome.
So that's pretty much it. This level isn't super crazy, but it offers some things that aren't found in the other levels. There's a ton of orcs here though, so if you have traps that you need to gain experience with, this is a good level to do it on. But let me know what you guys think of the Dragon Boneyard. Did you have any difficulty with it? Do you have any setup ideas or trap use that you think is really cool here? And feel free to throw it in the comments. If you want to see me live, feel free to follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/VermillionPhoenix. And yeah, until next video, until next stream, I will catch you guys then. Take care of yourselves as always, and I sincerely mean that from the bottom of my heart, especially with everything going on with this COVID situation worldwide. Just take care, folks. Make sure you are living your best life and trying to make it your best to see another day. And, you know, we'll see each other again. Till then, as always, have a good one, folks. Peace.